אזרחי ישראל, אנחנו במלחמה. לא במבצע, לא בסבבים, במלחמה. הבוקר חמאס פתח במתקפת פתע רצחני נגד מדינת ישראל ונגד אזרחיה. אנחנו בתוך זה משעות הבוקר המוקדמות. כינסתי את ראשי מערכת הביטחון. הנחיתי קודם כל לטהר את היישובים מהמחבלים שחדרו פנימה. הפעולה הזאת מתבצעת בשעות הללו. במקביל הוריתי לבצע גיוס מילואים נרחב ולהשיב מלחמה שערה בעוצמה ובהיקף שהאויב לא הכיר. האויב ישלם מחיר שהוא לא ידע מותו. אני קורא בינתיים לכל אזרחי ישראל להישמע בקפדנות להנחיות הצבא, להנחיות פיקוד העורף. אנחנו במלחמה ואנחנו ננצח בה.
Tonight, with just over a month to go until Election Day, the first and only meeting between the two men who hope to become Vice President of the United States, Democratic Governor Tim Walz of Minnesota and Republican Senator J.D. Vance of Ohio.
Now, this is likely the final debate of this election cycle, and voting is already underway in 20 states. CBS News polling shows this remains a race either presidential candidate could win. The CBS News vice presidential debate starts now.
Fight for every single vote, and we're going to take this country back.
And we are ready to continue to build the future together.
We're going to turn this whole country red with President Donald J. Trump's leadership.
You know what's at the end of this little journey? Kamala Harris as the next president of the United States.
Vice presidential debate.
Good evening, I'm Nora O'Donnell, and thank you for joining us for tonight's CBS News Vice Presidential Debate. We want to welcome our viewers on CBS, on other networks here in the U.S. and around the world. We have a consequential night ahead, and our focus is the issues that matter to you, the voter. Let's introduce the candidates. Minnesota's Democratic Governor Tim Walz and Ohio's Republican Senator J.D. Vance, tonight meeting for the first time. The stage is set. Governor, Senator, thank you for joining us. Let's get started. Tonight, our country is facing several unfolding crises. The Middle East is on the brink of war. Americans are suffering from the catastrophic impact of Hurricane Helene. And now a labor strike as 25,000 dock workers from Maine to Texas are picketing. We're going to begin tonight with the Middle East. Margaret.
Thank you, Nora. Earlier today, Iran launched its largest attack yet on Israel, but that attack failed, thanks to joint U.S. and Israeli defensive action. President Biden has deployed more than 40,000 U.S. military personnel and assets to that region over the past year to try to prevent a regional war. Iran is weakened, but the U.S. still considers it the largest state sponsor of terrorism in the world, and it has drastically reduced the time it would take to develop a nuclear weapon. It is down now to 1 or 2 weeks' time. Vance, the same question. Would you support or oppose a preemptive strike by Israel on Iran? You have 2 minutes.
So, Margaret, I want to answer the question. First of all, thanks, Governor. Thanks to CBS for hosting the debate. And thanks, most importantly, to the American people who are watching this evening and caring enough about this country to pay attention to this vice presidential debate. I want to answer the question, but I want to actually give an introduction to myself a little bit because I recognize a lot of Americans don't know who either one of us are. I was raised in a working-class family. My mother required food assistance for periods of her life. My grandmother required Social Security help to raise me, and she raised me in part because my own mother struggled with addiction for a big chunk of my early life. I went to college on the GI Bill after I enlisted in the Marine Corps and served in Iraq. And so I stand here asking to be your vice president with extraordinary gratitude for this country, for the American dream that made it possible for me to live my dreams. And most importantly, I know that a lot of you are worried about the chaos in the world and the feeling that the American dream is unattainable. I want to try to convince you tonight over the next 90 minutes that if we get better leadership in the White House, if we get Donald Trump back in the White House, the American dream is going to be attainable once again. Now, to answer this particular question, we have to remember that as much as Governor Walz just accused Donald Trump of being an agent of chaos, Donald Trump actually delivered stability in the world, and he did it by establishing effective deterrence. People were afraid of stepping out of line. Iran, which launched this attack, has received over $100 billion in unfrozen assets thanks to the Kamala Harris administration. What do they use that money for? They use it to buy weapons that they're now launching against our allies and, God forbid, potentially launching against the United States as well. Donald Trump recognized that for people to fear the United States, you needed peace through strength. They needed to recognize that if they got out of line, the United States global leadership would put stability and peace back in the world. Now, you asked about a preemptive strike, Margaret, and I want to answer the question. Look, it is up to Israel what they think they need to do to keep their country safe, and we should support our allies wherever they are when they're fighting the bad guys. I think that's the right approach to take with the Israel question.
Senator Vance, the U.S. did have a diplomatic deal with Iran to temporarily pause parts of its nuclear program, and President Trump did exit that deal. He recently said, just 5 days ago, the U.S. must now make a diplomatic deal with Iran because the consequences are impossible. Did he make a mistake? You have 1 minute.
Well, first of all, Margaret, diplomacy is not a dirty word, but I think that's something that Governor Walz just said is quite extraordinary. You yourself just said Iran is as close to a nuclear weapon today as they have ever been. And Governor Walz, you blame Donald Trump. Who has been the vice president for the last 3.5 years? And the answer is your running mate, not mine. Donald Trump consistently made the world more secure. Now, we talk about what the sequence of events that led us to where we are right now, and you can't ignore October the 7th, which I appreciate Governor Walz bringing up. But when did Iran and Hamas and their proxies attack Israel? It was during the administration of Kamala Harris. So Governor Walz can criticize Donald Trump's tweets, but effective, smart diplomacy and peace through strength is how you bring stability back to a very broken world. Donald Trump has already done it once before. Ask yourself at home, when was the last time, I'm 40 years old, when was the last time that an American president didn't have a major conflict break out? The only answer is during the 4 years that Donald Trump was president.
Hello, everybody. Thank you very much for tuning in today. Today is Sunday. It's October 6th, 2024. My name is Eric Simpkin, and you are watching the Political Badass Podcast. If you didn't have a chance to watch the vice presidential debate this week between J.D. Vance and with Governor Tim Walz, you really should. I mean, I learned a lot about policy. I learned a lot about J.D. Vance. I also learned quite a bit about Governor Walz. But one of the most poignant things that I'm taking from that video that I just showed you was J.D. Vance's last words on that clip. And that was that there is nothing more or better to come if Walz and Harris are elected, because Harris is already in office. She already holds the second seat as the vice president of the United States of America. And the policies that we've seen, the decisions we've been seeing the effects of in every household across America are due specifically to the policies of the Harris-Biden administration. Just today, I saw an article where they released $157 million to Lebanon in aid because Israel is on the offensive in Lebanon to take out Hezbollah, which is actually a bigger threat to Israel's existence. And when I talk about Israel, it's not because as a Jew, I am a victim. We're not victims, okay? We are on the offensive to defend ourselves. And sometimes that means taking preemptive measures to protect your homeland, your home, your family. And that's what this podcast is about. I called it God, Family, and Country. And what God, Family, and Country represents to me are the three pillars of the traditional American family. That's right, the American family, our families. My family had a pretty tough week this week. It is the high holidays, the Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur in the Jewish religion, a time in which really we believe that God is listening a little closer to each one of us. And I was actually on a website. I'm not really seeking answers. I am seeking information, but I want to know why we're seeing some of the things we're seeing. And I have found myself to have become much closer to God in the last couple of years than I've been in my adult life for many reasons. But really, It's because I want the future generations of my family to have a spiritual relationship with God. And I was reading something on the Chabad website, and that's a movement, the Chabad Lubavitch movement in Judaism. And there's several connections one can have with God, but when I was reading about our souls. Something I don't think about that often is our soul, the soul that God gives us as creatures on this earth. And it really is an amazing thing to think about your soul, your connection to spirituality and God. And sometimes we find that we drift away, far away in some cases, from the biblical domain. And that biblical domain is what this country was founded on. It was founded on the rule of law and Judeo-Christian values. And we are seeing a divergence from those values in our leadership. I mean, if you look around, nothing to me is making sense. If it's making sense to you, I guess that's why some people are saying we're going to vote for more of the same. But I'm not sure, nor am I convinced that the people that are in support of the Harris-Walz campaign are really up to speed, aware, educated about what's going on. We just had a horrific occurrence this week as a country in North Carolina, Georgia, South Carolina, Tennessee, with Hurricane Helene. And when I saw the response or lack thereof from the federal government, I was in disbelief, and even further disbelief when Kamala Harris did show up on a prompted, scripted tour of that area and promised those residents $750. I don't know about you, my fellow Americans, but $750, that doesn't get us through the grocery store for a family of four for a week and a half. It really doesn't. Yet, if you're an illegal immigrant, FEMA's giving you $2,000 on a prepaid card. Our sources of income, money, have dried up in America. Our economy is not doing well. People are struggling and suffering from all walks of life. There is no DEI when it comes to the struggle of economics here. Okay, diversity, equity, inclusion. We're all feeling it, and that's part of equity. They're not looking to rise us all up like one would think when they talk about it with joy and peacefulness and, being more neighborly. Really, that means being more communist. That's what I see. That's what shines through to me every time that I broach this subject of what's going on in America. I can't help but think and feel and believe that we've been infiltrated on every level of government. The Chinese government 100% is at work to take over our world, and it is being taken over by commies. And we need to stop that. And when you look at the news, things going on, you have to realize what's going on. President Trump yesterday returned to Butler, Pennsylvania, where an assassin tried to take his life and ultimately killed a member of that audience, Corey, who jumped on top of his wife and children when those shots rang out to save them, and he did, at the expense of his own life. A very tragic experience for anyone. As we all know, anyone that's losing a loved one, it's a very difficult time. And these policies that President Trump put in place, they do affect us all. And the policies that Harris has put in place are also affecting us all. I'd like to share with you one personal experience that I've had and my family's had that's hit home very hard. And that is VA choice, veterans' choice for health care. My future father-in-law, he had a heart disease problem back in 2015-16. And he was on the list for a heart transplant, but couldn't stay on the list because he reached the age of 70 years old. And if you're not aware, at the age of 70, it's very difficult to get on that heart transplant list. So he needed what's called an LVAD, a left ventricle assistance device. It's basically like an artificial heart, but much, much more complicated than that. Unfortunately, we found out this week that he's suffering from a really bad infection that they can't seem to cure. And they're trying one last regimen. But had it not been for VA choice, Stuart, he would not have had a chance on life 6 years ago. but he did. And when President Trump came to office, one of the first things he did was sign that VA choice bill as an executive order that gave VA patients the opportunity to go outside the VA hospital system to get treatment that they need that might not have been able to been accomplished. And his left ventricle assistance device was installed in a very major surgery 6 years ago. And they actually call it a rebirth when you have that surgery. Again, unfortunately, I'm asking for your thoughts and prayers to be with Stuart as he is in a battle of all battles, and I hope and pray that he can beat and win that battle. But again, the policies that we see from the federal government, they affect our families. In that case, it was a very positive outcome for my family, and we're all very thankful. But look at some of the policies that have affected your loved ones in an adverse way, whether it's in the educational system in school with children having to be in a situation where they're going through these preparedness drills for school shooters and active shooters. Got to be the most scary thing for those 50 million students of ours in our public education system that's rotted from within. They're building an army of people, 50 million strong, to fight parents because they are not for parental rights, the government. And these are policies that have been implemented during the Harris administration, and they need to stop. And there's only one person that can stop it, and they're using every tool that they can to stop him from stopping these problems, and that's Donald J. Trump. They're stopping him with assassins, with political warfare, all sorts of things that are in place to stop the freedom that we are guaranteed by not only our Constitution, but by our God. So my hope and prayer for all of my friends out there listening is that you are able to find a path to righteousness, to God, connect your spirit and your soul back with God, and that will provide you with a lot of the answers that you will need to survive if Harris is elected. And what we need to do is everything possible to stop that from happening. What you can do, you have to become a force multiplier. That is exactly why I started the Badass Podcast, the Political Badass Podcast. It's not because I'm a badass. It's not because I want to hurt people. It's not because I'm a tough guy. It's because I realized that I needed to become what I call a force multiplier. I learned that from Stephen K. Bannon, who's sitting in prison right now in Danbury, Connecticut, for defying a subpoena from the January 6th committee, which is a sham committee. It had no right to exist. Therefore, it had no right to issue a subpoena. And it certainly cannot execute a subpoena and force someone to speak that has executive privilege on conversations they had with President Donald J. Trump while they were his advisor. And that's what happened to Stephen K. Bannon. He sits in prison for 4 months. At the end of his term is October 31st, when we'll have him back in the seat at the War Room, helping us to find a path to victory and to elect Donald J. Trump as the 47th president of the United States of America. Again, I caution you, those that are on the fence that are thinking that Harris is a much better option. It's really not, for a multitude of reasons. And I would encourage you to visit my website, ericsimkin.com, ERICSIMKIN. The first thing you need to do is you need to go to the website, or you need to go to the New Jersey Secretary of State's website, and you need to check to make sure that you are listed as an active registered voter at your current residence. Tonight, my two children, my twin daughters, they're my everything. They're coming over for dinner tonight. And yesterday, I just decided to check theirs. All you have to do is enter your first and last name and your birth date on the New Jersey website, and it will tell you if you're actively registered at your current residence. And if you're not currently an active registered voter, you will not be able to vote in the November 5th election. And that is critical. We need every single voter to turn out. And not only to turn out, we need you to bring 10 people with you. That's what force multiplying means. It means to find and use your voice to have sometimes difficult conversations with the people that you love, admire, and respect about the decisions they make when they vote and how they affect the others around them. In your own families, I'm talking about, your friends. It's okay to have discourse with people. If you notice, if you do go back and watch that debate, it wasn't a hostile environment. It was a conversation with two people on different sides of the aisle discussing what they think needs to happen. And what JD Vance said he needs to think happens resonates with me. And I couldn't agree with him on more on most things that they say. You're never going to find a politician that you're going to agree with everything on. That's what you have to understand. You're not voting for their personality. You are voting for their policies. Policies is what dictates how we live here in America. There's a tremendous amount of power in the presidency. The president has executive authority to make decisions for all of us. And those decisions that have been made over the last 3 3/4 years have affected everyone I know in some way and in a negative way. And if you don't know anybody that's been touched in a negative way, you should consider yourself very lucky, but I would also consider yourself ill-informed. Information is key. You need to get a diverse view of things before you make decisions on anything in life. You know, you want to buy a car, you don't just go buy the first car you see, do you? You go and you investigate things. What's going to be best for me long term? Ask yourself, what is going to be best for me long term, for my family, for future generations of my family that don't even exist yet? That's what you need to think about. How's my neighbor going to do if I just vote by personality? You need to vote by conscience, by your moral compass of what is right and wrong. And the best way that I can think to describe to do that is to reconnect with God. That is where our rights came from. The First Amendment, the freedom of speech, the freedom of religion. All of our other rights are derived from that one singular right in the Constitution. And that singular right, along with all the others, were granted to every American citizen by God. Okay. And if you no longer believe in God, that's your choice. Okay. But you can't take an atheistic view on things when all your neighbors believe in God, because your choices are affecting them. You need to consider others once in a while. Okay. There's a heavy focus on self in this administration. And that's what DEI does. And that's why we have identity politics. Okay. And that's why race has become such an issue. It's become an issue because that's all anybody talks about. Okay. I understand that there are people that think that they're marginalized based on a group that they're in, but maybe the group that you're hanging out with is the one that's really making you feel marginalized by talking about it all the time. Maybe you need a new set of friends. Maybe you need to find a different path. And that path can be guided by God if you allow God in your life. And I'm not a Bible thumper. I'm not proselytizing. Jews don't do that. We're not looking to recruit you. We're just looking to help to make the world a better place. And even those words under this administration and regime have been hijacked. Tikkun olam, make the world a better place. That's not what it's about for the people running this agenda on us. And some people have bought into it. I was in a household the other day, and it's an older Jewish woman, and she's telling me how she did vote for Trump in 2016, but not in 2020, because she knew Biden was demented, which we all knew. Somehow he's elected, but yet there's no problems with our elections. There's no election integrity issues. There are. That stuff is still going on for those of you that don't know it. Okay, you can ask a Gold Star mother who's 67 years old from Colorado. What did she do? She just got convicted to go to prison for 9 years. She is a county clerk in Colorado. Her name's escaping me now, and I'll try and think of it. Tina Peters, I believe it is. This poor woman, 67 years old, clerk of a county that handles elections. And she was given a directive by the Secretary of State to delete all of the records, the electronic records for the ballots in her county after the 2020 elections. That's against the law. You can't do that. You're instructed and governed to keep those records. So she didn't delete the file. She kept the file. Problem with the file is that there's evidence of voter fraud and election fraud in those files. And they're looking to stop anybody from doing that in the future. So they put this poor woman in prison for 9 years. God willing, Donald J. Trump gets in office and can commute her sentence. That would be phenomenal. It's just a travesty. And she had really good lawyers, the best lawyers. Mike Lindell from My Pillow. He helped sponsor her legal fees, and he's done a tremendous amount for election integrity. As a matter of fact, I just saw Laura Trump at the Butler rally yesterday say that they've trained in Swamp the Vote. That's swampthevote.com. They have trained over 200,000 poll watchers for the Republican Party to be at the polling stations this November 5th. And that is critical because I'm not saying every voter is cheating, but they have ways of manipulating the vote tallies. And we've seen bits and pieces of it from all over. And they say it doesn't happen, but we all know it does. And we are going to be careful because this is not the most consequential election of our lifetime. It's not the most important election of our lifetime. As Elon Musk said when he spoke yesterday, that this will be the last free election, or somewhat free, if the Republican Party doesn't win it, because they are changing things. Here in New Jersey, for example, we call him King Murphy, total scumbag, horse-toothed jackass governor that we have, Murphy. He wants to change the voting age to 16 and 17 years old. You want to know where all 16 and 17-year-olds are? They're in public schools, most of them, right? Think about that. A couple 100,000 extra votes for the Republican Party if you allow 16 and 17-year-olds to vote. I mean, with the way that they're educating children in the public schools in New Jersey, I think a 16-year-old might have the mentality of a 12-year-old. I mean, we lost 2 years with COVID in between, so that's a 2-year guaranteed missing of education, understanding of the worldview, whatever you want to call it. We're behind. So they want to take that 2-year gap and let those kids vote. Meanwhile, the person that the Democrats are putting up is the president of the NJEA, the New Jersey Education Association, a bunch of pitiful political activists. And the head of the snake there is a gentleman, and I use that term extremely loosely, as Sean Spiller. You know what I like about Sean Spiller? He's got a really good parking spot for when I go up and testify at the education hearings in Trenton. He's got a really good parking spot right across from the Trenton State House. So you know what I do when I go there to testify? That's right. I park right in his spot, and he gets pissed. Tries to call the police on me. Guess what? It's a parking spot, Sean Spiller. You're not going to be governor. We are going to prop up great candidates. We're going to crush you. If we don't crush you, Eric Simkin and Political Badass, we're packing up and we're moving to a free state because this state will no longer be free. So we got 2025 coming up that we need to consider as well. My point here, friends, is there's a lot of stuff I could talk about with news and give you my opinions on things. My opinion is if we don't win this election, we are 100% screwed. That's my opinion. And I'm not offering it on any other subjects that we're talking about. There's a lot of podcasters out there that want to sit there and give their opinion on different facts and things that happen on the debate, on the Butler rally yesterday. Here's my advice for that. You want to see what happened? Go watch it. You want to know what to do about it? Watch me. And here's what you're going to do. You're going to go and download an application off of online. It's called Turning Point Action. Turning Point Action is going to bring up the 15 closest people, no matter what your proximity, if you choose to campaign and canvass locally. And if you want to help out in some states that really matter, because unfortunately, New Jersey is less relevant than some of the other swing states. So we got Pennsylvania right next door. You can volunteer to make phone calls and send texts to voters that matter a little bit more than the voters in New Jersey right now for this presidential, unfortunately, like I said. You still got to get out and vote in New Jersey and vote down ticket on every Republican candidate from school board and fire commissioner up to president of the United States. That's what you need to do. That's your civic duty. That's your obligation to yourself, your family, and your neighbors. But I need you to download this app and force multiply. I don't just need you to vote for Trump. Okay, I expect you to vote for Trump if you're watching this podcast, and I expect you to vote down ticket. But what I'm also asking, begging, really begging you to do is to go out and get 10 more people. I started this podcast because I swore I'd get 10,000. I don't know where I am in my calculations, but I'm definitely way ahead of 10. So that's what I'm asking from you. Get 10 voters out to the poll. You don't want them coming out November 5th. There's a lot of arguments and discussions and opinions on this. We need to bank the votes. That's what the Republican Party, that's what Donald Trump, Laura Trump, the vice chair of the RNC, everyone's asking us to do is to bank our votes. Think about it. If you vote early or you send in your mail-in ballot, the people on our side, the Republican Party, that are following your ballot and following your vote to make sure you vote, they will no longer have to worry about your vote and they can move on to somebody else. That item in of itself is enough reason for me to go out and vote early. I did it this primary and I did it last election. And it's the best way to vote that I found. If there's any chance that you might not be able to vote on November 5th, order yourself a mail-in ballot. No, nobody likes mail-in ballots. It's the biggest way that these Democrats can find to chase ballots, harvest ballots, get ballots submitted illegally, all sorts of ways that they have. But it exists. And while it exists, we need to play the game. And we don't even need to play the game. We need to win, and we need to win big. And the only way to do that is to make sure that every single person that you have even the slightest influence over gets off their ass and gets their vote cast. Off your ass and cast a vote. That's what I'm here to talk to you about today. I'm not here to sugarcoat things. I'm not here to give you my opinions. This isn't opinions. This is fact. If we don't win this election, there will not be another chance. You vote early. In New Jersey, it's like 2 weeks before November 5th. You can go in there from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., except on Sundays. I think you can only go from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m., and you cast your vote as a regular machine-counted vote. If you can't commit to that, to stopping somewhere on your way somewhere for 2 weeks, then I need you to instead get yourself a mail-in ballot. But before you do any of that, number one, I want you to go on the state website. And if you can't find it on the state, go to ericsimkin.com under early voting and click to register to vote. And you can check to make sure that you are registered as an active voter. If you're not an active voter on election day or when you walk in to early vote, it's going to be too late to cast a vote. So not tomorrow, today. That's what I'm doing with my daughters when they come here at 5 o'clock tonight. The first thing we're doing is we're going online and we're re-registering them. It's exactly what I'm doing. So that's 2 of my 10 right there, my 2 daughters. What are you doing with your children that are 18 and old enough to vote? Make sure that they are registered as an active voter. Check on yourself. That website should be shut down with so many people going to check it every single day. Matter of fact, in Butler, Pennsylvania, they were trying to shut down that database in Pennsylvania during the Trump rally on purpose so people wouldn't go up and register to vote. I need you to make sure you're registered, and I need you to commit to yourself. Commit to your spouse, to your child, to the future of your generations of your family, that you will stop at nothing to make sure that your vote is cast for Donald J. Trump and every Republican down that line on November 5th, no matter what. That's what I'm here to ask you to do. You heard out Elon Musk. He couldn't stop repeating it. He's a pretty smart guy. Is he the best public speaker? Probably not. But the one thing that he wanted to get across was making sure that you do everything possible to absolutely guarantee that your vote is cast. That's what we need. If we get everybody to vote, we will win this election. If we do not get everybody to vote, we will not only lose our election, but we will lose our freedoms and we will lose this country. And I am not going to sit around here and watch it happen. I'm going out today and I'm going to make sure that I get another 8 people. I'm going to get 10 today. That's my commitment. How many are you going to get? How many are you going to get? That's what I'm asking you. So with that, I'm going to tell you that we are ending this podcast early. Okay, I've got a lot of stuff to do today, but I think my message is clear and it should resonate loud and clear with you. Get 10 people off their ass and get them registered and get their ballot into the box by November 5th. Thank you very much. God bless you. God bless your families. And God bless the United States of America.